We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Okay, so let's move on to Timothy B. Timothy has been an advocate for OLED as a display technology until he read an AVS forum article by Mark Henninger comparing OLED and quantum dot displays, with quantum dots taking the edge. The reasons in the article seem compelling to Timothy. What do we think? Yes, I should have read that article. Sorry, guys.
Well, to be a little bit clarifying, in this particular article, Mark Henninger was largely focusing on gaming. He was focusing on HDR gaming. And he was saying that typically when you're gaming, you're not gaming with the lights all off, that you normally have some room lighting on.
That's
and
true
so
for watching video too.
Yeah, but he was basically saying the black level advantage of OLED is less of a consideration because you're going to be in a well-lit room. And the extra peak brightness afforded by quantum dot backlit LCDs ends up being a greater benefit than the deeper black levels without the high peak brightness offered by OLED. Also, that the LCDs that they've tested so far have faster or less latency, would be the way to say it, that there isn't as much latency between the signal being sent and actually appearing on screen, which is important for gaming. He mentioned burn-in, which, you know, again, we've been talking about, and, you know, like I say, it's not an impossibility. He's right that if you're doing some marathon gaming session where you always have the heads-up display that's in the exact same spot, you know, showing your ammo or your health meter or something like that.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, you know, so, you know, when we're talking about that, I mean, I think we probably haven't done the best job on this podcast of saying there are the times when the high dynamic range LCD, whether it's quantum dot backlit or not, but that it isn't always the case that OLED is going to look better in every single instance. I think we have done a semi-decent job of mentioning that if you have high ambient light, then it makes sense to go for the thing that can just plain get brighter, and you're not as worried about the deepest black levels.
Now, just to be clear, is there a quantum dot television I can go buy right now that is the electroluminescent style?
No.
There's not one, right?
No.
Okay, so there is nothing that's emissive. There is only passive.
That's right, yeah. Anything that's being called quantum dot right now is using the quantum dots as a backlight for an LCD TV. Right. It seems like Samsung would like to maybe confuse and distract you from that.
Yes, they want to smooth that over and put that Q in place of that O because it looks like an O, because they can't quite make it work as well as an OLED yet, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there was one other thing that Mark Henninger said in here, which is lower price, which is partially true, but he goes on to
Not if it doesn't exist.
Well, no, I mean, he goes on to talk about some models like Samsung's KS9800 or Sony's X930, and I'm like, those aren't less expensive than the B6 OLEDs. They just aren't. Right. So, yeah, it's tough to me. I mean, I think the general thing of if you have a bright room and that's where you're watching, that it does make sense to go for the display that just has higher peak brightness. And if what you're doing is gaming, of course it makes sense to go for the display with the lowest latency. But LG, to their credit, has actually released some firmware updates specifically for HDR gaming to try and reduce that latency a little bit. It was worse when they first came out. It has now been improved thanks to firmware updates. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't wholeheartedly agree. I just think it comes down to the ambient lighting.
Yeah, I think that's it too. Because in the gaming world, people really chase that latency number, and they want that response time to be like 1 millisecond. And at some point, I'm thinking, I don't think your frame rate is only so high. Does it make a difference if it's 1 millisecond or 7? I'm not so sure.
Well, it's not so much frame rate; it's that delay between signal. You know, you press the button. Is there a slight delay before it shows up on screen? If you're playing some fighting game where you're counting frames,
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Not response time, but latency.
Yeah. So
now I can see how that would be. Annoying.
That's a lot of video card and.
Yeah, that would seem to be more going on in your computer.
Yeah.
Well, no, because there's the signal that comes out of whatever your gaming device is, and then there's the delay before the television or the display shows it, and that's what they're talking about. You know, if it's doing some.
Is the type of technology doing that, or the electronics in the TV doing that? In other words, can it? It's not the fact that it is an OLED. It would just be the circuitry that LG or the computer in the TV that LG chose to use versus whatever Samsung chose to use.
No, I mean, they're doing some small amount of processing to the video signal. How quickly can you do? I mean, essentially, when they introduce a game mode, or like what they just did with this firmware update to introduce this HDR gaming mode on the OLEDs, what they're basically doing is turning off as much processing as they possibly can.
Yeah,
they're like, don't tone map it, don't scale it, don't try to interpolate any frames, just throw the thing up there as quickly as you possibly can. So that's pretty much all that's going on there. But
quick check says Amazon has the 65-inch OLED now for $3,000.
Yeah,
not bad.
It was down at 2,800 for a bit there. So
yeah. There's the curved one for 2,500, but to heck with that, curved. Can't do it. I mean, I may as well have a little Volkswagen running around my screen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Are they still making those?
Yes, apparently so. They still exist. You can still buy it. I don't know why you would. Okay, so I guess that answers what do we think?
Yes.
That was the question.
That's right.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.